Hello and welcome to another episode of Epic Events. My name is Candace Davis and I'm the Director of Event Programming and Creative Services here at vFairs. And we have a really great episode today around the topic we're all curious to learn more about, and that is AI specifically for events. My guest on today's show is Adam Parry. He's the editor of Event Industry News and co-founder of what we all know and love, Event Tech Live. Adam, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me on, Candice. Thank you to the vFairs team for inviting me on as well. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you. I feel like you're everywhere. You, from traveling to events to, posts to Twitter to LinkedIn. I mean, you name it. You're literally everywhere. So thank you for taking the time out to be on the podcast. Can't wait to hear more about your insights on this topic that seems to be kind of like a big question mark to a lot of planners and organizers, even me too. I'm stumped by some things with AI, and I'm hoping you can uncover the mystery today.
I will be happy to impart what very little knowledge or opinion I have on the subject as well. No, I'm happy to help, and I think it's a big topic and something that we're going to be discussing a lot more in our sector about the pros, the cons, and the pitfalls as well.
Yeah. So tell us, for those who don't know you, I'm sure a lot of people listening to this already know who you are, but where are you located in the world and what exactly do you do?
Sure. So I'm actually located in a city called Manchester in the UK, which are famously known for their two football teams or soccer teams, if you are from North America, Manchester United and Manchester City. I live here with my wife and my son Jude. And I'm actually remote. So the rest of my team is actually London, Liverpool, and kind of over on the east coast of England as well. Actually, I think there are a couple of them actually in Europe somewhere at the moment, kind of doing a remote working holiday. So we move around a little bit. And what does my role entail? Well, I do a little bit of everything in the business. Predominantly, my day-to-day role is kind of looking at the content that we're producing on Event Industry News, what we're publishing, what we might want to contract some of our freelance writers to write about, other people in the industry. I work on this as well, like scheduling guests for our podcast and making sure we've got the right guests and the right topics in place. And that's something I've always loved, and I'll never let go of that. But what else do? I get involved in the marketing communications with the marketing team for our business. I get involved in operations for the event design. I often help the sales team, with companies who might need a little help and support kind of just around what our event is and what it does. I often end up getting involved in kind of sales with some of my close friends and clients and things like that they just want to deal with me, right? They just like to deal with me. So I do a little bit of that, which I love, honestly. Sometimes it does feel very much like I'm spinning a million plates. But I actually like to, I do really like, I love to be busy. I really do. I love to have calls scheduled with people and learn about people. And that's one of the amazing things. I love to go to other events and speak at those events and help, other industry events kind of educate their attendees and things like that. I was at PCMA convening leaders I don't know how long ago it was. It feels like a long time, but I think it was like a week or so ago. I'm out to Salt Lake City for another event at the back end of this month. And then obviously we've got Vegas and things like that. So yeah, I hope that explains a little bit. It's not the life for everybody. I know some people just like to deal with one thing and have like a couple of things on their plate. But I just love kind of dipping in and out of all elements of the business and helping whoever needs it, really.
Yeah, you're definitely a jack of all trades, and you to keep all the plates spinning. I don't know how you do it all. So bravo.
Lots of caffeine. Lots and lots of caffeine. Definitely.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, that's your secret. I was going to ask you what sauce says there. Yeah, I know today we're specifically going to talk about AI for events. I know when I reached out to you and we're just kind of going back and forth about what topics might kind of be buzzing right now. It's the beginning of 2023. And I think it's definitely due time to talk about AI as it is coming for us. So, many planners out there that I've talked to, I'm sure you probably have the same, you're hearing the same kind of sentiments out there from them too, around the topic. And, what does it mean for the event, landscape for years to come? And also, I feel like it's here, and it's something that needs to be talked about a lot more. And for a lot of people, a lot of people just don't know what it is, how they can use it, how it can help them with event planning, maybe agenda setting, that sort of thing. So let's kind of dive in to all these questions around AI. Number one, how is AI used in events? But before we even dive into that, what's your interpretation of AI specifically? What would be your dictionary?
Yeah, so AI, artificial intelligence, is a computer program, machine learning, that has been fed information and taught to think about that information in a certain way. I guess the most readily recognized global AI model at the moment is OpenAI, and what we have become to know of that is ChatGPT. That's the user interface that we have as humans to be able to leverage that technology in a meaningful way for us. And at the moment, if you go to ChatGPT and you start to play around with it, you'll soon see that you can ask it questions, just kind of similar to how we might ask Google a question. But instead of Google serving us, 10 million web pages with references to what we have searched for, what ChatGPT actually does is give you a very defined answer. It gives you one answer. Now you can expand on that. You can ask it to expand on that. You can ask it to give you references. You can delve into it. But if you were to ask it, how do I bake a strawberry fondant cake or something like that, it would give you a recipe and a method to do that. So it's a very interesting tool in the sense that it can give you very quick and precise information. But basically that's been taught based on really the World Wide Web, right? Within certain parameters. We OpenAI have defined certain parameters on it, so we can't all of a sudden start building nuclear bombs and things like that we might get into trouble for. But it's basically a window into the World Wide Web and human knowledge on a huge range of subjects. But what it can't do is it can't give us philosophical answers. It can't give us problematic answers. There are certain things that you can go off and ask it, and it won't be able to tell you maybe what you want it to in the way that you want it to, because again, it's been built and designed and modeled around that. So it's in a really interesting way. And actually just on that, one of the things that OpenAI are working on, because ChatGPT is version 3, I think, at the moment of the model, what they're actually now having to work on is kind of like an invisible watermark, because they don't want the model to be trained on things that it puts out or people take from it and then put back onto the internet, right? So it doesn't want to it doesn't want to say it doesn't want to reference its own content, if that makes sense, and then use that to produce more content, because it would probably skew the results. So yeah, there's also the parameters on what it can't do.
Right. And when we talk about events, I mean, you can use AI for so many different things, good and bad, like we just talked about. But specifically, for events, I know of a planner who was using it to, kind of map out their agenda and their schedule for their event. I mean, it's giving it times, like I want this in 30-minute increments. I want this to be at 45 minutes. And it's talking about topics as well, just kind of saying like, hey, we want to talk about strategy, specifically to marketing initiatives around XYZ. And it just pulls out a solid topic. I mean, you can take this agenda that this basically, bot created an AI and put it on a landing page somewhere. It looks legit. I mean, it's
I did that myself just the other day. I'm not going to lie.
Did you?
So
that's my next question.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, and this is the way that we've been testing it, and I've been playing with it to see the benefits to us and to me and things. And I think that's one of the most interesting things about it. And the way that I know there's a lot of fear around replacing jobs and, people becoming redundant. But what I would say is the thing about tools is they never replace people. But what they do is they make the workforce more efficient. Yeah. A tractor cannot replace a farmer. kind of thing. So what we should really be looking at from the events industry perspective, as far as I'm concerned, is AI my personal assistant that costs me very little or nothing to employ? And how does that make me more accurate, efficient with my time? And I think that's some of the interesting things. It can automate tasks. It can do that, what you just said. It can take all that content that you've got for your event and schedule it and start to build the foundations of your event for you. Now, there's still going to be that human input. There's still going to be you kind of tweaking things and moving things around because it's just not kind of got it the way that you want it. But it can definitely take tasks that might take hours and refine them into minutes. And my own example of that is leading up to Event Tech Live, I knew there were probably 6 or 7 key topics and themes that I wanted to see at the event based on previous experience and what I was talking to other event industry professionals about. And what AI allowed me to do is, one, I really quickly wrote down a title for something, and then I actually used an AI tool to refine that title to give me suggestions on how to better present that. Then what I did is I threw those titles into ChatGPT and I asked it to give me a definition of each of these titles. And then what I did is I took that and I asked it to give me, if I was delivering this as an event, what key points and what takeaways should we cover so that the attendees get value from it. And actually, if you go to eventtechlive.com, if you go to the Las Vegas page and you click on the agenda, you can see the ultimate result from that there. Now, there was an element of a refinement process. I did take that content and I shared it with 2 or 3 team members, and we did some human checking on it, and we did some human fact checking and things like that. But that really took a very long process, even though it was only like 6 or 7 kind of pieces of content and abstracts and descriptions for sessions. It took what would be definitely 4 or 5 hours work and kind of refined it down into probably less than an hour overall. So it's a huge time. And then on top of that, it can do other things. It can analyze data. So, we've got so much data and so much access to much data that we might want to ask a question about our data, and it can give us the results and the information and look at that data in a really interesting but concise and visual way. So we're not kind of having to look at Excel spreadsheets and cross-reference this and that and other and make some really interesting kind of business decisions around that data as well. So there's a couple of things that I think is really interesting for the events industry.
Yeah. And anything to add regarding, bots? I know we just talked about basically the perks. Time. All of us are so pressed for time these days. Time management is really, really hard, especially with so many people working remote. And to take, 6 hours of work down to, 30 minutes, an hour is incredible, But anything you want to add there?
Yeah, I see chatbots actually being kind of twofold. One is, I guess, the way that we might interface with our own assistant. Like, it might be a chatbot. We'll either, and we're already doing that, right? We're doing it with Siri and Google and Alexa and things like that. They're chatbots. We are chatting to them and they are speaking back to us with information. So we're already kind of used to this. From an attendee perspective, I guess a chatbot is, again, a quick access to information. And I think what people often forget about chatbots is they are extremely accessible for people. Anybody, some people that might have disabilities and can't type or text or other things, chatbots are a really great way for them to be able to get the information they need from you about your event. So I think they're a really great tool. What we need with chatbots, though, is they need a wealth of information. They need a depth of information. They basically need to know everything about your event in order to serve the right information. So what I see is actually probably more of a universal chatbot that we can then plug our event information into so that it can give context about the event, but then other questions that attendee might ask about things around our event. So it's like, oh, I'm going to your event. When's the agenda? What's the thing? What's a great place to grab coffee in the morning? What bus gets me to the venue? Like, what's the weather conditions and things? So I think that's the great crossover, is event information, but very much contextual information around the venue and everything around the world, so that they can kind of use the same tool to get all of that information in one go.
Yeah. And on-demand AI can be anything from, the registration, being an assistant there, to maybe a comprehensive virtual concierge that's like always there 24/7.
Yeah.
Anything to add?
I think personalized recommendations is a really interesting one, right? And I think that's where artificial intelligence might creep a few people out, but actually would be a real help to a lot of individuals, right? And I guess I would liken it to being served an advert on Facebook or somewhere like that when you've kind of searched for something on Google. Most people don't like that to some degree. I actually personally find it really helpful and useful, because if I'm looking for something, then I want lots of recommendations about companies or people that can provide that solution or product to me. I want the hard work done for me, right? I want that to be done. And I think in an event space, like, we think about, as event organizers, we think about our events in the entire time that event happens, right? From start to finish. But actually an attendee will only intersect with a small subset of that event in any one time. Very rare does any attendee actually spend the entire time of your event actually engaged with your event, because they have to go off and check emails. They might be able to only make it for one half day. They might have to only be able to make it for a few hours and things like that. So I think personalized recommendations for attendees will be allow them to decide how they interact with the event in the most efficient and effective way for them, right? Mm-hmm. When do I need to come in? How do I get to the content that I want? And how do I meet the people that I need to meet as well? And I think that's where AI can also be really, really powerful in creating a really great experience for our attendees by providing them the information to make their time efficient.
Yeah. And talking about event apps, tying in with AI, affecting social media strategy. I know there's a couple of other examples I had just recently of pulling in some, social media content that you just, speak to the bot, it turns around and it looks like a human put it together. It's very thought out, intellectual, and even images that correspond with it too. And in 5 minutes, or less, you can have your next post, for things to go viral too. But any, things that you can share about tying in event apps and social media using AI?
Yeah, sure. I think one of the things where it comes to, like, let's say your event app, and maybe you have people sharing information and content within that, using AI, you can train that AI, or as I see it, you could be able to train that AI to identify certain phrases, emote, whether that's certain feelings and look and feel, and then actually do a lot of different things with that, right? So it might be somebody that's like having the best time of their life and the food was amazing. The AI grabs that, it throws it over to the social media team gets to say it, and they can push that out immediately as part of the amplification of the event. But it might also be somebody not having the best of times, right? Like, I've just fallen over something, or the catering wasn't great, or somebody just did this. And maybe the AI can grab that and also give it to another team that kind of looks into that and acts upon that as well, right? So it can be everything from positive to just operational things, to things that are of a negative nature, but are best dealt with at that moment in time and can be acted upon. So eyes and ears and kind of a deep dive into, because and especially when it's integrated into another technology like an event app, because obviously people are engaging with that. So I think that's just some of the ways that it could, really be integrated into that to benefit the event overall from a social media perspective and otherwise as well.
Yeah, and I know you kind of put some pros and cons. We've already talked about several of these, but if we're putting together a short list of pros and cons specifically to what you've seen out there with using AI for events, what would that look like? So what are some pros? What are some cons?
Definitely increased efficiency, definitely automation of repetitive tasks that kind of bog us down, improved personalization that we've said, and recommendations for attendees. And as I also said before, one of the things that we're really excited about is using AI to quiz our data that we have across our event technologies and across our CRMs and databases, so that we can make informed decisions. Because often event design and event delivery is often very opinion led, let's say. So we need to be able to kind of go, oh, I've think this would be a really good idea if we've got this type of person in the room, but have we? And I think also what it'd be great for is tracking trends and identifying people that you might have lost in terms of they were loyal attendees, and maybe are you losing them a little bit? Is the content still hitting them and things like that? What are the cons? I think definitely the cons when using AI within any event experience with attendees is that education and communication of why you're using that AI. There are lots of people that don't like change. There are lots of people that don't like technology. I was at an event recently, and the event was using cameras to detect emotion of an attendee. And they actually had two attendees put their hands up and actually physically say that if they'd have known that was happening, they probably wouldn't have come to the event. Mm-hmm. So I think there's an education piece that we need to do, because we don't want it to be an audience attrition. And definitely there's potential for errors and bias in anything that we program. You know, ultimately you've got to remember AI is programmed by humans, and our biases can go and be AI's biases as well. You know, just the way that your kids turn out with the same biases generally that their parents have, right? It's because we're training and we're teaching what we believe to be true. There's a cost element. You know, we've got to be mindful of cost. I think ChatGPT is costing something like $3 million a day to run. I don't know who's paying for that, but somebody with very, very deep pockets. I think Microsoft have just took in 10 billion or something like that in, aren't they, or something? Yeah. So, you know, there's an element of cost that we need to be considered, but I think that cost will be hidden because we'll be using tools, let's say like Jasper, which is a content marketing tool. You know, you'll pay Jasper a subscription fee because it benefits you and stuff like that. And I think actually what we'll see is AI being introduced into tools and technology that we already expect. I'm sure vFairs are already looking and delving into like how they can integrate AI to make vFairs an even better product than it is already, right? So there's that. And then not something that I don't think we have to consider, but you know, maintenance, updates, things like that. What'll be interesting is, will it become like the internet? And when we can't get on the internet, or when the internet goes down, are we a bit stuck? Can we continue on doing our normal day-to-day jobs? We so heavily rely on the internet now. I'm sure you can. It's like, if the internet goes off at home, you're like, okay, what should I do till it comes back on, right? Yeah. So AI could be very much that as well. It could very much be reliant on it to make things happen.
Yeah, I think those are really good, you know, pros and cons around AI, specifically for events and just in general too. And two more questions. I know we've kind of gone over a little bit of this, but what comes top of mind when you look at the two main problems of that AI can solve? So,
from an event perspective, actually, one of the things I think it could solve from an education process, when looking at submissions that have been made to you as an event organizer and as education team, is fact checking, right? Mm-hmm. Often people will submit information and say, I'm going to present a thing on this and and they might reference a few things. But in most scenarios, the person looking at that content is not the expert in that field of that content. They're the expert in scheduling education and dealing with speakers and dealing with all that. But are they the expert, especially in some really high level stuff like, I don't know, pharma, banking, legal, that kind of stuff? And I think actually AI can help as a tool to really fact check that content and actually analyze the content to make sure that it is the right type of content to be produced, because ultimately those speakers and that content reflects on the event organizer, right? So that's kind of stuff. And then we've already mentioned, you know, automating tasks and providing recommendations and things like that. So those are some other challenges. And then efficiency. Efficiency is probably the biggest thing that it can solve. As an industry, we charge for our time. That's what we do. So if we can be more efficient with our time, then we can be more profitable, or maybe we can be less stressed, because like being an event organizer or planner is still like what, the third, fourth most stressful job listed on these reports and surveys when they come back.
I do believe that for sure. So this is how AI can help, you know, de-stress some of you out there. And limitations for AI. I know we talked about some of them too, just learning from just being human, learning from human ways and things. It's not going to always be just like you mentioned earlier, it's going to have a bias where like a lot of the things that we do needs to be very like neutral, very, open-ended, things like that. But I know also mentioning so many of the updates, I can see a lot of updates happening frequently just with the use of AI and them noticing like what limitations it has now and how it can make it better. So I see it getting better over time for sure. But for now, with it being still so new to a lot of people out there, what are the top two limitations that you see?
Well, I think like anything with brand new technology, there's always going to be elements of things not working quite right? Mm-hmm. We didn't create a rocket and put somebody on the moon the first go. We've got to remember that. And there are still errors and still malfunctions and still things that go wrong with technology now. I think I might be getting this wrong, so please apologize, but doesn't the modern day iPhone have more computing power than the original kind of shuttle that went to the moon or something? Somebody will put me, maybe we can use AI to fact check that. But yeah, the limitations do depend on computing power, the information that it is fed, because if we tell it that the sky is red, it will believe the sky is red and it will tell you that the sky is red. So, if that AI model is given free rein on the internet, for example, and then we look at social media platform like Twitter, where maybe not since Elon Musk has taken over, but certainly in its history, there has been a huge amount of misinformation and wrong and biased information on that platform from people who want to spill a certain narrative, right? So all of a sudden, if we were to give an opportunity for that AI to take that information and there was nobody saying this is right or this is wrong, then, it's only going to believe what it's fed and it's going to take that as fact. The existential crisis of that, though, is who is the person telling it it's right or wrong? Mm-hmm. And do we agree with them? Mm-hmm. So it opens up the argument for how do we hold AI accountable to the truth when many, many people will rely on it for giving them factual information. And I don't know if anybody's figured that out yet. I guess this is why different nations and different religions and different people from different countries, they all have different narratives about what's right and wrong in their lives. AI ultimately will be programmed by an individual or a human from a certain country or from a certain background. So there's going to be an element of bias always, until maybe we allow the AI to think for itself. And then that's the Terminator kind of end of the world kind of scenario that everybody fears as well. So I don't know the answer on that, but there's definitely some limitations to it in terms of being used. I don't think we should rely on it too much overall.
Yeah. Do you think that you'll start implementing it even more now that you've kind of dabbled and tested it out yourself? And, your impression of it seems to be very positive, but will you continue to use it to kind of map out agenda, schedules, that sort of thing?
I think we will use it as a tool to help efficiency and speed, but that's going to take some time to trial and see what it's good at and what it's not good at. So, when we look at some of the headlines and this is going to replace journalism and this is going to replace freelance editors and reporters and content creators and things like that, I don't think they are for a second. I think they're going to be tools that help those people do a quicker and better job against deadlines and things like that. But I still think we'll inherently value that human control or editorial over all of that. So I personally will be using it as tools. I wouldn't all of a sudden just say to a AI model, hey, write me an article on the best virtual event platforms in the industry and then stick that up on Event Industry News or put that on Event Tech Live, because I'd have to fact check it. I'd have to do some due diligence. I'd have to see how it's determined, the order or the group of virtual event platforms that it's decided should feature in that, right? So it's not a tool to just like anybody out there as an organizer who's thinking, oh, all of a sudden I'm going to be able to get AI to produce lots and lots of content that's great for search. It's going to get me lots of traffic and things like that. Think about it again. Like, actually, the people that will benefit from the most are the people that you are already contracting to create that content for you. They might just be able to offer it you at a much more affordable rate because it's more efficient for them to create it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And like you said, using it as a tool and not looking at it as replacing someone is really important for us to, to keep in mind. Adam, thank you so much for being on the show. This was super insightful. We could go on for a long time and talk about this. Maybe we'll have a part 2, maybe 6 to 12 months from now, and see what our thoughts are on AI and how much it's come forward since the beginning and now. But thank you for uncovering a lot of, answers to questions that planners and organizers have out there now. And such a good time to talk about this too. I'm seeing a lot of it pop up. I know with event industry news, you're seeing a lot of it too on your side, but we're hearing more buzz around it, especially on the event planning side. So thank you so much.
No, thank you for having me on, Candice.
All right. Before we end the episode, where can our listeners find you?
Oh, interesting. I hang out at events on Twitter as Punchtown Parry, and LinkedIn you can find me as Adam Parry. So yeah, either of those two.
All right. I'm sure a lot of people will find you out there. You're all over the internet. So
I'm like the event industry rash of the internet. That's what you're trying to say, right?
No, really though, you're everywhere in a very good way. But for Event Tech Live, so it's coming to the US. I have to talk about this. It's going to be in Las Vegas. So tell us a little bit about it before we end the episode. Yeah,
sure. So this is the first year of us bringing the event to the US. But that's been 10 years in the making, because Event Tech Live London has been 10 years, and we hope to bring that laser focused event, that format event to the market. It will be free to attend, so people can come to the event. They can access 3 stages of content, roundtables. There's other networking events and things like that we're going to intermingle. And really, it's about connecting interested individuals, whether they're the directors of the business, whether they're the event technologists within the business, whether they're in innovation, whether they just want to kind of learn themselves about what technology is doing and all the different aspects of technology that intersect our industry, and do that over 2 days in a really efficient way, and meet with vendors in a marketplace. And, hopefully for the vendors, that'll help them find new customers and new ways to support the industry through the event. That's the format that's worked really well. Like I say, it's free to attend. Nobody has to pay to come, other than exhibitors, I will say. I'm sorry. Somebody's got to fund it. But that's worked really well. And the reason we've done this is, a large proportion of our audience on Event Industry News is from the North America region. They've been engaging with our content for years on event technology. And this is not to say that event technology isn't represented at other industry shows in the States and in Canada, because it absolutely is, but it's never the focus. It's never laser focused. And that's worked really well for everybody, attendees, exhibitors, sponsors, everybody included in London. And we've been asked by our customers and by our audience for a long time now to kind of bring the brand to there. So it's a first time event. We hope to have around 50 exhibitors ranging from all different types of things. I think vFairs is even an exhibitor there. And, somewhere maybe 1,500, 2,000 attendees, hopefully over the course of the 2 days. I'm already starting getting people ping me from places like Intel and others that are coming, and incentive meetings worldwide, and VMware and Bloomberg and stuff. So we're definitely going to have some really good people in the room. And at our last event, just to give you an idea, these are the people that actually turned up in person. An active budget for event technology and software of about 770 million. So those are the figures that they say that they currently spend on all of their everything from AV to hard tech to iPads to software to operational technology and things like that. So it is obviously quite broad, but there's a serious amount of money being spent on technology in the sector, and I can only see it growing over the next few years as well.
Yeah, I agree. Well, congrats for coming over across the pond, I should
Thank
say, to Las Vegas.
Yes.
That's a fun place to start in the U.S., huh?
Absolutely.
And yes, vFairs, we are really excited to be there. We are at Event Tech Live in London and had an absolute blast. I mean, the energy was so high. I mean, you could just really feel people were ready to be back in person.
Yeah.
A lot of meetings were happening, a lot of networking too. So thank you so much for, organizing Event Tech Live. It's something that a lot of us, companies in the event tech industry and just events in general just really enjoy coming to. So thank you for putting that out there for all of us. I appreciate that. And that's April, right?
Yes, April the 26th and 27th at a place called the Expo, which is at the top of Fremont Street, actually. So we've gone downtown, just a little bit more of a relaxed and different vibe and things like that to the Strip. But hey, it's like 2 seconds away from the Strip. So if you want to stay on the Strip, if you want to go gamble on the Strip, if you want to go see the shows on the Strip, then it's a short ride away. But yeah, we've gone downtown just to give a little bit of a different experience this year.
Fun. That's awesome. Well, we really look forward to attending that coming up in April. And again, Adam, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining the podcast today.
Thank you for having me on.
Yeah. And many thanks to everyone out there tuning in and listening to this podcast. Many more podcasts are to come. And if you're interested in chatting with us here at vFairs, please just send us over an email. Email address is sales@vfairs.com. But until next time, peace, love, events. Bye, y'all.